Hello, it's Kylie from Painted Wing. In today's video, I'll be demonstrating how to paint a sunflower with watercolors. I don't usually paint flowers, so this was sort of a learn-as-I-go painting. This piece was painted on Arch's cold-press paper. As for colors, I used cadmium orange hue, cadmium yellow, serpentine green, burnt umber, paynes gray, and burnt sienna. As for paintbrushes, I have a variety of sizes. I would recommend using a small round brush, such as a number 0 or 3/0, and then something a little larger, such as a number 6 or number 8. And then one of the most important brushes I used for this painting was a 1/2-inch oval wash brush by Princeton. I used this to create my petals and leaves. And then for your largest brushes, I would use either a 12 or a 16. I'm going to start this painting off by first applying water to the center of the sunflower using my large number 16 brush. I'll then dip my number 8 round brush into some yellow ochre paint and add it to the water. Then I'll mix a little bit of my burnt umber with my yellow ochre paint and add that to the wet area. I'm adding it to the outer edge of the circle. And then I'm going to add some yellow paint, just dabbing that in. Now using a small brush, this here is a 3/0 round, I'll add some burnt sienna paint to the edge of the circle. Next, I'll go back to my number 8 round brush and add some burnt umber paint directly to the middle while everything is still wet. And here I am blending things a little with my brush. And a little bit more burnt umber. Now I'm adding some clean water to the wash. Now I'll be adding clean water to the wash. This will help add some texture. And then I'll be going back in and adding a small amount of burnt sienna and some burnt umber as well. Next, I'll dry this using my blow dryer. You can also just allow it to air dry, but I like to speed things up a little. Next, I'll be working on the flower petals. For the flower petals, I'll be using my cadmium yellow paint, and I'll start off with my number 0 brown brush. Right here I'm using a wet on dry technique. I'm adding some pigment and then using my brush dipped into water to blend it out. Some of my orange paint is mixing into the yellow, but that's okay. It helps create some value. I'll actually be adding some more burnt sienna to create a sharp edge and some contrast to the petals. Next, I'll blend the yellow and the burnt sienna together to create a nice gradient. Now I'm going to paint this petal, creating a gradient from orange to yellow. The darker areas are where there are shadows. I'm going to erase this line a little so it doesn't show through the paint. Here I'm adding a little bit of clean water to the paper, and then after loading my brush up with paint, I'm going to apply some yellow. Now that the paint in the center is pretty dry, I'm going to go back in with some more pigment. I'm just sort of dabbing or stippling color in. This will help create a texture similar to the center of a sunflower. Here I am continuing to add color to the petals, adding some bold contrast to the piece. So I decided I'm going to approach the rest of the petals in a slightly different way. Like I said, I'm still kind of learning how to paint flowers. I'm going to create loose petals using my paintbrush to create the petal shape. For this I'm using an oval wash brush. The shape of this brush works really well to create the shape I'm looking for. After adding some yellow, I'll add some orange while the paint is still wet. This will allow the colors to organically mix. And a few dabs of water. Some more orange here. And now using my yellow-green color, I'll create some leaves using the same brush. Now I'm going in with a few details using my number 0 brush. Before I create more petals, I'll add a little bit more water to the paper. This will help the paint that I add blend nice and softly. As I add the paint, you can see it blend with the water I already added. Now I'm adding some orange paint while the yellow is still wet. And I'll be adding more petals using the same technique. And a little more orange here. And some more water before we add the petals. To create some blooms on the wash, I'll be adding some clean water to the wash before it dries. I need a little bit more burnt sienna down here. Now I'm going to be drying it a little bit. I don't want it to fully dry. I just don't want it to be quite as wet. And then I'll be adding some more burnt sienna. And another petal, mixing my yellow and burnt sienna. Now I'll be working on the stem and leaves. For the stem, I'll be using serpentine green, but any yellow-green color would work. I'm going to create the stem using a single long brush stroke. If you need to add a little extra paint to the stem, that is okay. Here I'm adding a little brown. Now I'm using a number 0 brush to paint the stem to the leaves. To create the leaves, I'll be using my oval wash brush again. It'll be similar to how I created the petals. I'm going to stop the leaf right before the stem. And then I'll add some clean water here to lightly blend the two while also creating blooms. Another leaf here, this time using a deeper green. And now I'm going to splash some paint onto the paper. The next step for this painting is to add definition to the petals. For this process, I'll be using a wet on dry technique, meaning I'll be using wet paint on dry paper. I will also be using a small paintbrush. This here is a 3/0 round brush. This will help me create thin lines. I will also be using less water than I did for the wash. By using less water, the paint will remain more saturated, which means the color will be darker. I want to use a darker paint because it will contrast against the yellow-orange that's already there. I am mainly using burnt sienna for this process, but for some of the darker parts, I'll add in burnt umber as well, which is my brown paint. In order to soften the lines, I'll be getting my paintbrush wet and blending it out. Lastly, I'm adding a little extra paint to the center of the sunflower. The three colors are burnt sienna, burnt umber, and yellow ochre. And now my painting is almost complete. Thank you so much for watching. This was a little different for me since I never paint flowers. Please leave a comment below if there's something else you'd like to see me paint.